My daughter told me not to come to her wedding. Then she found the letter her father wrote before he died. Linda Walker had spent most of her adult life believing that love was proven quietly. Not through speeches, grand gestures, or photographs people posted online. Love was waking at 4 in the morning because a child had a fever. It was learning how to stretch $40 across a week of groceries. It was sitting beside a hospital bed and pretending not to be afraid. It was saying, "I'm fine," when the person asking needed you to be fine more than you needed to tell the truth. Linda had become very good at that kind of love. At 62, she lived alone in the same modest two-story house in Ohio, where she and her husband, Thomas, had raised their only daughter, Claire. The paint on the porch railing needed attention. One kitchen cabinet refused to close unless you lifted it slightly. The backyard maple tree had grown so large that its roots had cracked part of the old stone path Thomas laid one summer when Claire was 9. Linda noticed all of it. She also noticed the silence. Thomas had been gone for 16 years. Some days that number felt impossible, other days it felt like another lifetime. He had died of pancreatic cancer when Claire was 15. There had been 6 brutal months between diagnosis and funeral, and Linda remembered almost every one of them in pieces. Chemotherapy appointments, plastic waiting room chairs, Thomas trying to joke with nurses after losing 20 pounds, Claire sitting on the stairs pretending not to listen when adults spoke in whispers, bills arriving in thick envelopes, friends saying they would pray, relatives offering advice nobody had asked for. Then there had been the final weeks. Linda almost never allowed herself to remember those. She did not need to. Her body remembered for her. Even 16 years later, the smell of antiseptic could tighten her throat. Certain hospital commercials made her change the channel. If someone said the phrase, "fight harder," she had to remind herself that people usually meant well. Claire remembered differently. She remembered her father before illness. She remembered him teaching her to ride a bicycle, packing ridiculous lunches for school, making pancakes shaped like animals, and shouting too loudly at soccer games. Linda was grateful for that. She had worked very hard to make sure those were the memories Claire kept. After Thomas died, Linda became both parents. She worked as an office manager for a dental practice during the day and took bookkeeping jobs in the evenings. She sold Thomas's truck. She refinanced the house. She used his life insurance carefully. She paid medical debt, kept the mortgage current, saved what she could for Claire's education, and made sure her daughter never heard the word broke spoken in panic. Claire went to college, then law school, then Chicago. She became the kind of woman who walked quickly through airports while answering emails, wore suits that always seemed to fit perfectly, and knew how to speak in rooms where everyone else was trying to sound important. Linda was proud of her. Almost painfully proud. Their relationship remained close, though adulthood changed its shape. Claire called Sunday evenings. Linda visited Chicago 4 or 5 times a year. They took one trip together every summer, usually somewhere simple. Nashville, Savannah, Charleston. Once, when Claire received a large bonus, she surprised Linda with 4 days in Paris. Linda spent the entire first afternoon staring at the Eiffel Tower and saying, "Your father would not believe this." Claire had laughed. He'd complain about the coffee. He would absolutely complain about the coffee. They had been happy. Then Claire met Andrew Bennett. Andrew was 35, intelligent, polished, and kind in the careful way of a man who had been raised to shake hands properly and send thank you notes. He worked in commercial real estate. His father had founded a regional development company. His mother, Victoria, chaired charity committees, served on museum boards, and seemed to own a different navy dress for every possible occasion. Linda wanted to dislike them. It would have made things easier later. But at first, she did not. Andrew treated Claire well. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details. He called Linda Mrs. Walker until she told him 3 times to stop. When he asked Linda for her blessing before proposing, she cried so hard that he had to get her tissues from the kitchen. "You don't need my permission," she told him. "I know. But you have my blessing." "Thank you." Then she added, "If you hurt her, I know where you live." Andrew laughed. Linda did too. She meant it only a little. The engagement was announced in October. The wedding was planned for the following June at a lakeside estate outside Chicago owned by one of Andrew's family friends. At first, Claire called Linda about everything. Flowers, music, shoes, guest lists, the dress. Linda flew to Chicago for the bridal appointment. When Claire stepped out wearing a simple ivory gown with long sleeves and a low back, Linda covered her mouth. Claire laughed nervously. That bad? Linda shook her head. No. Her eyes filled. You look like every age I've ever known you. Claire stopped smiling. Then she started crying too. Victoria Bennett, seated nearby with a glass of champagne, watched them with a small, unreadable smile. Later, she told Linda, "You two are very close." "We are." "That's lovely." Linda could not explain why the word lovely sounded like an observation rather than a compliment. The first real tension appeared over the guest list. Claire wanted 120 people. Victoria wanted 180. Andrew wanted peace. Linda wanted Claire to be happy. That should have made her the easiest person in the room. Instead, Victoria began asking questions. Is your sister coming? Linda looked up from the seating chart. My sister. Susan. Linda's hand paused. She had mentioned Susan only once. Yes, Claire invited her. You two aren't close. No. Victoria waited. Linda returned to the seating chart. Some silences are invitations. Linda did not accept that one. Susan was Linda's younger sister by 3 years. They had once been inseparable. Then Thomas became sick. Susan had strong opinions about treatment. She spent nights online reading about clinical trials, supplements, specialized cancer centers, experimental procedures, and miracle recoveries. Every conversation became an argument about what Linda and Thomas should be doing differently. You're giving up too soon. You need another opinion. You can't let him stop treatment. People survive because their families fight. Linda had listened until she could not. Thomas's cancer had spread rapidly. The doctors were clear. More aggressive treatment might add weeks. It might also make those weeks unbearable. Thomas decided to stop. He made that decision himself. But Susan never believed it. Or perhaps she needed not to believe it. At Thomas's funeral, she told Linda, I hope you can live with this. Linda did. She had to. A month later, Susan apologized. Then took the apology back during another argument. Then apologized again. Eventually, the sisters simply stopped trying. Claire had remained in occasional contact with her aunt, birthdays, Christmas cards, social media. Linda never interfered. Thomas had loved Susan too. Family was complicated enough without recruiting children into old wars. So when Claire invited Susan to the wedding, Linda said nothing. Victoria seemed fascinated. Family estrangements always make seating difficult, she said. It isn't an estrangement. What would you call it? Linda looked at her. A long disagreement. Victoria smiled. How diplomatic. The second tension appeared over money. The Bennetts were paying for most of the wedding. Linda offered what she could. $10,000. It was more than she could comfortably afford, but less than Victoria spent on flowers. Claire tried to refuse. Mom, you don't need to do this. I want to. You've already done enough. Linda smiled. That has never stopped mothers before. Victoria was gracious. Almost too gracious. You should absolutely contribute whatever feels appropriate. Linda heard the word appropriate. She pretended she had not. Andrew's family wanted a string quartet for the ceremony, a 10-piece band for the reception, custom menus, a welcome party Friday night, brunch Sunday morning, transportation for guests, and a photographer whose fee made Linda check whether she had read the number correctly. Linda never criticized. Claire had worked hard. If this was the wedding she wanted, Linda would enjoy it with her. Then Susan called. It was a Tuesday evening in February. Linda almost did not answer. She did anyway. Hello. Hi. Susan's voice sounded older than Linda remembered. Hi. There was a pause. I wanted to tell you myself, Susan said. Tell me what? Claire asked me about Thomas. Linda sat down. What about him? It's about the end. Her stomach tightened. What did you say? The truth. Linda closed her eyes. There are moments when the past does not return gradually. It enters the room all at once. What truth, Susan? That I thought you stopped fighting too soon. Linda gripped the phone. You had no right. She asked me. You could have told her to ask me. I told her what I remember. What you remember is not what happened. I remember you refusing to take him to Houston. Thomas refused Houston. You were his wife. He was still a person. Susan exhaled. I'm not doing this again. Then why did you tell my daughter? Because she asked why we stopped speaking. Linda's voice shook. And you told her I let her father die. I did not say that. You never have to say it exactly. Susan went quiet. Linda continued. You always did this. You took your fear and turned it into an accusation. That is unfair. No, what was unfair was standing at my husband's funeral and telling me you hoped I could live with honoring his last decision. I was grieving too. So was I. Another silence. Then Susan said softly, Claire deserves to know what happened. Linda stared at the dark window. She knows her father was sick. She was 15. Exactly. You protected her from everything. And yes, maybe too much. The word struck somewhere Linda had never fully examined. She ended the call. Claire did not call that Sunday. Linda waited until Monday evening. Then Tuesday. On Wednesday, she sent a message. Everything okay? Claire replied an hour later. Busy week, call you soon. Linda knew her daughter too well. Something had changed. When Claire finally called Friday night, her voice sounded careful. Mom, can I ask you something? Linda sat at the kitchen table. Of course. Did Dad want to keep doing treatments? Linda's throat tightened. No. How do you know? He told me. Did he tell the doctors? And yes. Did he sign anything? Linda stared at the table. And yes. What? A do not resuscitate order near the end, hospice paperwork. Claire was quiet. Aunt Susan said there was another hospital. There were several possibilities. She said there was a specialist in Houston. There was. And you didn't go. Your father chose not to. Claire's voice sharpened. Why? Because he was dying. A silence. Linda closed her eyes. She hated saying it. Even now. Claire whispered maybe he wouldn't have. The doctors were very clear. Doctors are wrong. Sometimes. You always told me there was nothing else they could do. There was nothing else likely to help. That isn't the same thing. No. Linda heard Claire breathing. Why didn't you tell me? You were 15. I'm not 15 now. No. So why didn't you ever tell me? Linda had no answer that would sound good. Because Thomas had asked her not to burden Claire with his final fear. Because he had known their daughter would remember every decision as a referendum on whether she loved him enough. Because Linda had promised him that Claire would not spend her youth replaying his death. Because when Claire did ask questions in college, Linda gave simplified answers. Because over time, silence became habit. Finally, she said, "I thought I was protecting you." Claire laughed once bitterly. Everyone keeps saying that when they decide what I'm allowed to know. Claire, did you use Dad's life insurance to pay off the house? Part of it. And your medical debt. Our medical debt. And my college. And yes, Aunt Susan said there would have been enough money to take him somewhere else. Linda stood. Your aunt did not see our finances. She said Dad wanted to fight. No. How do I know? The question broke Linda's heart. Not because Claire asked it. Because Linda realized she had helped create the uncertainty. You know because I am telling you. That isn't proof. Linda went silent. Claire immediately softened. Mom, I'm sorry. No. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I'm confused. I know. Why won't you tell me everything? Linda looked toward the hallway. Upstairs in the cedar chest at the foot of her bed, there was a sealed envelope. Claire's name was written on it in Thomas's handwriting. Linda had kept it for 16 years. Thomas wrote the letter 4 days before entering hospice. He told Linda to give it to Claire when she is old enough to understand that adults can love each other and still be scared. Linda had asked when that would be. Thomas smiled weakly. You'll know. She had never known. Every birthday seemed wrong. Graduation seemed too celebratory. Law school seemed too stressful. The first big promotion seemed unnecessary. Then years passed. Linda became afraid that giving Claire the letter would reopen a wound that had finally scarred. Now she thought of it upstairs. But she did not mention it. Not yet. That was her second mistake. The first had been protecting Claire too completely. The second was thinking she still had time to correct it later. Over the next month, Claire became distant. She still called, but conversations were shorter. Wedding planning continued mostly through messages. Victoria began communicating directly with Linda about logistics instead of Claire. The change was subtle enough that Linda almost convinced herself she imagined it. Then came the bridal shower. It was held at Victoria's home, a large stone house outside Chicago. Linda arrived carrying a wrapped silver picture frame containing a photograph of Claire dancing on Thomas's feet when she was 5. Claire hugged her at the door. The hug was real, but shorter. Susan was already there. Linda saw her across the room. 16 years had softened Susan's face and silvered her hair. For one moment, Linda remembered being 12 and sharing a bedroom, whispering after lights out. Then Susan looked away. The shower was beautiful. Too beautiful. Flowers everywhere, catered lunch, champagne, printed games, gifts stacked in coordinated paper. Linda smiled, laughed, and did everything expected of the mother of the bride. Near the end, Victoria stood to make a toast. To Claire, she said, who has brought so much joy into our family. Everyone raised glasses. Linda did too. Our family, Victoria continued, believes that marriage is not only the joining of two people but the creation of a new center, a new loyalty, a new home. Linda glanced at Claire. Her daughter looked uncomfortable. Victoria smiled. And sometimes creating something new requires leaving old pain where it belongs. People murmured agreement. Linda's skin prickled. After the shower, she found Claire alone in the kitchen. Was that about me? Claire looked tired. Mom, was it? Victoria was trying to be supportive. Of what? Claire put down a tray. She knows I've been upset. You told her about your father. She asked what was wrong. Linda nodded slowly. And what did she say? That I need boundaries. With me. With everyone. Claire. Her daughter's eyes filled. I'm getting married in 4 months, and instead of being happy, I'm questioning half my childhood. I'm sorry. That doesn't fix it. I know. Why did you never tell me Dad chose hospice? I told you he stopped treatment. You told me the doctors had nothing else to offer. That was essentially true. Essentially. Linda flinched. Claire continued. Did he ask you to stop treatment? And yes. Did he ever tell me? No. So all I have is your version. And Susan's. Claire looked away. That hurt more than if she had answered. Linda said quietly, "What do you think I did?" Claire's face crumpled. I don't know. And say it. I don't know. Do you think I wanted your father to die? No. Do you think I refused treatment because I wanted the insurance money? Claire's silence lasted 1 second too long. Linda stepped back. No. No, Mom. You wondered. I wondered why Aunt Susan believed it. Because grief made her angry. And what did grief make you? The question was not cruel. That made it harder. Linda answered honestly. Controlling. Claire blinked. I controlled information because it was the only thing I could control. I couldn't stop the cancer. I couldn't make your father stay. I couldn't make you less terrified. So I decided what you needed to know. Claire's eyes filled. That wasn't fair. No. Linda had never admitted that before. Claire looked surprised. No. No, it wasn't fair. Then why are you still doing it? Linda thought of the envelope. She could have told her. She should have. Instead, fear won again. I'm not. Claire stared at her. Linda hated herself for the lie. 2 weeks later, Victoria called. Linda was at work. Do you have a moment? And yes. I wanted to discuss the ceremony. Linda's stomach tightened. What about it? There has been some concern. And about emotion. Linda almost laughed. It's a wedding. Yes, exactly. Victoria paused. Claire is under tremendous pressure. I know. I think everyone agrees the day should be peaceful. Who is everyone? Another pause. Perhaps I'm speaking too broadly. And yes. Victoria's voice cooled. I am trying to help. Then say what you called to say. A silence. Then, Claire is considering whether it might be easier if you did not participate in the ceremony itself. Linda stopped breathing. What does that mean? She is considering having Andrew's aunt escort her mother's side representation. My daughter is considering not having me at her wedding. I said not participating in the ceremony. Am I invited? Victoria did not answer immediately. That was enough. Linda sat down. Did Claire ask you to call me? She is very emotional. Did she ask you? She asked me to help communicate. Linda closed her eyes. Put her on the phone. She is at work. Then tell her to call me. Linda, tell my daughter to call me. She hung up. Claire called 3 hours later. Linda had spent those hours moving through the dental office as though nothing had happened. When the phone rang, she went outside. Mom. Are you asking me not to come to your wedding? Claire began crying immediately. That almost made Linda angry. Almost. I don't know. That is not an answer. I need the day not to become about this. I have never made your wedding about me. No, but if Aunt Susan is there, then uninvite Susan. A silence. Linda laughed in disbelief. Of course. Mom, you believe her. I don't know what I believe. But you know which one of us you're willing to remove. That's not fair. I have been hearing that sentence a lot lately. Claire cried harder. Andrew's family thinks. I do not care what Andrew's family thinks. I do. The honesty silenced Linda. Claire continued. They've been incredibly supportive. They are paying for almost everything. They have introduced us to people who matter professionally. Andrew's father helped me get on the board at. Linda interrupted softly. So this is bigger than the wedding. What? You're afraid of embarrassing them. No. You're afraid I'll be emotional, or Susan and I will argue, or somebody will learn your family is messy. That is not what I said. Then tell me what you are saying. Claire took a shaky breath. I'm saying I need space from you until I understand the truth. Linda stared at the parking lot. Space until when? I don't know. The wedding is in 10 weeks. I know. Are you asking me not to come? Another long silence. Then Claire whispered, yes. Linda closed her eyes. The world did not collapse. Cars still passed. Someone pushed a grocery cart across the neighboring parking lot. A bird landed on a light pole. Life had an insulting way of continuing through the worst moments. Linda said, okay. Claire sounded startled. Okay. If that is what you want. I don't want to hurt you. That ship has sailed. Mom. I love you. Claire sobbed. I love you too. Linda swallowed. I hope you have a beautiful wedding. She ended the call before her voice broke. Then she sat in her car and screamed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just one raw sound into empty air. That night she went upstairs and opened the cedar chest. The envelope was exactly where it had always been. Claire's name. Thomas's handwriting. Linda held it for a long time. Then she placed it on her dresser. She decided she would mail it the next morning. She did not sleep. At 3, she got up, carried the envelope downstairs, and placed it beside her purse. At 6, she made coffee. At 6:15, she put the envelope back upstairs. She told herself she would not use a dead man's words to force her way into a wedding. She told herself Claire had asked for space. She told herself the letter belonged to her daughter, but giving it now would look manipulative. All of those things were partly true. The deeper truth was simpler. Linda was afraid. Afraid Thomas's letter would not vindicate her. Afraid Claire would read it and still choose distance. Afraid that after 16 years of being the keeper of his final words, she would have nothing left to protect. So the envelope stayed hidden. The weeks before the wedding were the loneliest of Linda's life since Thomas died. Friends noticed. Her coworker Bate asked why she was not shopping for a mother of the bride dress. Linda lied. I already have one. She did. A dark blue dress hung in the back of her closet. She had bought it 6 months earlier. She never returned it. Claire did not call. She sent one message on Mother's Day. Thinking of you, love you. Linda stared at it. Then replied, love you too. Susan called once. Linda let it go to voicemail. The message said, I never wanted this. Linda deleted it. Andrew called 3 weeks before the wedding. Linda almost did not answer. Mrs. Linda. Hello, Andrew. I wanted to talk. Okay. He sounded nervous. I don't agree with how this has happened. Linda waited. But Claire is struggling. I know. She feels like everyone is asking her to choose sides. No, she chose. Andrew sighed. That's not fair. Linda almost laughed. You people really like that sentence. I'm sorry. Does your mother know you called? No. Does Claire? No. Linda leaned against the kitchen counter. Why did you call? Andrew was quiet. Because I think she is going to regret this. Linda's eyes filled. Then tell her. I have. And she says she needs certainty before she can have you there. Certainty about what? It's about her dad. Linda closed her eyes. Some things in life do not come with certainty. I know. Does she? I don't know. Linda looked toward the stairs. The letter seemed to exist like a pulse somewhere above her. Andrew said softly, if there is anything she doesn't know, now would be the time. Linda's throat tightened. Why do you say that? Because every time she talks about this, she sounds like she is waiting for someone to prove something. Linda did not answer. Linda. I heard you. After they hung up, Linda climbed the stairs. She took the envelope from the cedar chest. This time she put it in her purse. She drove to the post office. She sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Then drove home. The wedding weekend arrived. Friday afternoon, Linda left work early. She had nowhere to be. That felt unnatural. Her daughter was having a rehearsal dinner in Chicago. Linda was home watering basil on the kitchen windowsill. She turned off her phone. At 6, she opened a bottle of wine. At 7, she ate toast because cooking felt absurd. At 8:30, someone knocked. Linda froze. She was not expecting anyone. The knock came again. She opened the door. Susan stood on the porch. For several seconds, neither sister spoke. Susan looked older than she had at the bridal shower. Smaller somehow. What are you doing here? Susan held up both hands. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. That is accurate. I need to tell you something. Linda almost closed the door. Susan said I lied. The door stopped. What? Not exactly lied. I convinced myself of something I didn't know. Linda stared at her. Susan's eyes filled. Thomas called me. Linda's chest tightened. When? 2 days before hospice. Linda gripped the doorframe. Susan continued. He told me to stop pushing you. Linda could not speak. He told me Houston was his decision. He told me the doctors had explained everything. He said he was tired. Tears filled Linda's eyes. Why did you never tell me? Because I was ashamed. Linda laughed bitterly. For 16 years. And yes. Susan began crying. I was angry at him. Then he died. And if I admitted he chose it, I had to admit that what I said to you at the funeral was unforgivable. Linda stepped onto the porch. You let Claire believe. I know. You told her I stopped fighting. I told her what I had believed before Thomas called. You left out the call. And yes. Linda slapped her. The sound shocked both of them. Susan touched her cheek. Linda's hand began shaking. I'm sorry. No, Susan whispered. I deserved that. I should not have hit you. I should have told the truth. Linda started crying. Why now? Susan looked toward the street. Because tomorrow is Claire's wedding, and she asked me to stand in the family photo where you should be. Linda closed her eyes. I couldn't do it. You already did. I know. Susan reached into her bag. I brought something. A small digital voice recorder. Linda stared. What is that? Thomas's message. The world seemed to tilt. What? I kept the voicemail. Linda's nays weakened. Susan guided her to the porch chair. I transferred it years ago when I changed phones. I listened to it whenever I wanted to hate myself. Linda stared at the recorder. Play it. Susan pressed a button. Static. Then Thomas's voice. Thin. Weak. Unmistakable. Sue, it's me. Linda covered her mouth. I need you to stop giving Linda hell. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But Houston isn't happening. That's my call. The doctors here have been honest with me, and I want whatever time I have left to be at home, not on another plane chasing something that isn't going to save me. Linda sobbed. Thomas continued. Linda keeps trying to take the blame because that's what she does. Don't let her. And don't ever tell Claire her mother quit on me. Linda is the reason I got through as much as I did. The message paused with the sound of breathing. Then, I love you. I know you love me too. Please make peace with this before it turns into something ugly. The recording ended. Linda could not move. Susan was crying openly. He knew, Linda whispered. And yes, he knew what you thought. And yes, and you still. I know. Linda looked at her sister. For years, she had imagined what it would feel like to be proven right. There was no satisfaction. Only grief. Claire needs to hear this. I know. Tonight. Susan nodded. I'll send it. Linda shook her head. No. As she stood. I will. Susan looked surprised. Linda went upstairs. She brought down Thomas's sealed letter. Susan stared. What is that? He wrote it for Claire. When? Before hospice. You never gave it to her. No. Susan looked at her. For once, there was no accusation. Only sadness. Why? Linda sat. Because I was afraid. Of what? That it would hurt her. Susan gave a small broken laugh. We really made a mess of loving people by deciding what they could handle. Linda looked at her. For the first time in 16 years, the sisters understood each other. Not enough to forgive everything, but enough to see the shape of the same mistake. Linda called Claire. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. She sent a message. Please call me. This is about Dad. There is something you need to hear before tomorrow. No response. At 10:30, Andrew called. Linda. Is Claire with you? No, she's at the hotel with Victoria and the bridesmaids. I need to speak to her. What happened? I have a recording of Thomas. A silence. What? And a letter. Andrew's voice changed. I'll get her. Do not tell her what it says. I won't. 20 minutes later, Claire called. Her voice was wary. Mom, your aunt is here. What? Susan came to my house. Claire went silent. She told me something she should have told both of us years ago. Linda looked at Susan, then pressed play on the recorder. She held the phone near the speaker. Thomas's voice filled the kitchen again. When it ended, Claire made no sound. Claire. Nothing. Then a sob. A deep one. Dad. Linda closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Why didn't Aunt Susan tell me? She was ashamed. Why didn't you? I didn't know about the recording. The letter. Linda looked down. I knew about the letter. Silence. What letter? Your father wrote you something before hospice. Claire's breathing stopped. You've had a letter from Dad for 16 years. And yes. Why? He told me to give it to you when you were old enough to understand. And you decided I never was. Linda's eyes filled. And yes, the word hurt to say. Claire cried. How could you? I was afraid. That isn't an answer. It is the answer, not a good one. What does it say? I don't know. You never opened it. No. Where is it? It's in my hand. Claire sobbed again. I want it. You should have had it years ago. And yes, I'm sorry. Can you bring it? Linda looked at the clock. Chicago was almost 5 hours away. And yes, Susan stood. I'll drive. Linda shook her head. I can. No, Susan said, you've had wine. Linda looked at her. Susan picked up her keys. Let me do one useful thing. They left at 11:15. Two sisters who had barely spoken in 16 years drove through the night carrying a dead man's voice and a sealed envelope. For the first hour, they barely spoke. Then Susan said, I hated you because you got to be the one with him at the end. Linda stared out the windshield. I hated you because you got to grieve without handling paperwork. Susan laughed through tears. I thought you were cold. I thought you were selfish. I was selfish. So was I sometimes. You were caring for a dying husband. That does not make me automatically noble. Susan glanced at her. Linda continued. I shut people out. I made decisions. I treated every question like criticism because I was terrified. Susan nodded. I criticized because I was terrified. They drove in silence again. At 3:40 in the morning, they reached Claire's hotel. Andrew waited in the lobby wearing sweatpants and a coat over a t-shirt. He hugged Linda. She had not expected that. Thank you for coming. Where is she? Upstairs. Susan remained in the lobby. I don't think she wants me there. Linda nodded. Probably not. Susan swallowed. I'll wait. Linda took the elevator. Claire opened the hotel room door before Linda knocked. Her daughter looked destroyed. No makeup. Hair loose. Eyes swollen. For 1 second, Linda saw the 15-year-old girl she had tried so desperately to protect. Then Claire noticed the envelope. Her face crumpled. Linda held it out. This belongs to you. Claire took it with both hands. Did Dad really write this? And yes. Why didn't you give it to me? Linda did not defend herself. Because I made a mistake. Claire stared at her. I thought protecting you meant controlling when you were allowed to hurt. Tears ran down Linda's face. I was wrong. Claire looked at the envelope. Stay. Linda nodded. Claire sat on the bed. She opened it carefully. The paper inside was folded twice. Her father's handwriting covered 4 pages. Claire began reading silently. Then she stopped. Can I read it out loud? If you want. Her voice shook. My Claire. If your mother is giving you this, then she has probably decided you are old enough to hear things I was too frightened to say while I still had time. First, I love you. Second, none of this is your mother's fault. Claire stopped and cried. Linda turned away. Claire continued. I am choosing to stop treatment. Linda argued with me about it more than anyone knows. She asked me to try Houston. She asked me to take one more round. I told her no. If you ever get angry about that, be angry at me. But I hope you won't. I am tired, sweetheart. There is a difference between quitting and knowing what a fight is costing the people you love. Your mother has spent months trying to make my fear smaller. She cannot make the cancer smaller. I know Susan disagrees. She loves me. Fear makes people strange. If someday people tell you Linda gave up on me, I want you to remember this. Your mother fought for me until I asked her to stop fighting my decision. That is love too. Claire's voice broke. Andrew sat in the corner, crying quietly. Claire continued. There is something else I need you to know. Your mother will try to turn herself into a wall after I am gone. Do not let her. She will decide your grief matters more than hers. She will work too much. She will tell you she is fine. She will make every decision by asking what protects you. Love her enough to ask what she wants. And when you grow up, remember that your mother is not only your mother. She is Linda. She gets scared. She makes mistakes. She deserves a life that is not built entirely around saving everybody else. If I have one regret, it is that we spent too much time pretending we had plenty of time. Don't do that. Say the hard thing. Ask the question. Show up. And if this letter reaches you near some big moment in your life, imagine me there being too loud and embarrassing you. I love you more than I know how to write. Dad. Claire lowered the pages. Nobody spoke. Then Claire looked at Linda. You asked him to go to Houston. And yes. Aunt Susan said you refused. I eventually refused to pressure him after he said no. Claire cried harder. Why didn't you just tell me? Linda answered quietly. Because I got used to carrying the version that hurt you least. It hurt me more. I know. Claire stared at her mother for a long time. Then she whispered, I told you not to come to my wedding. And yes, I chose Aunt Susan's story. And yes, I let Victoria call you. And yes, Claire covered her face. I am so sorry. Linda's first instinct was to move across the room and say it was okay. She stopped herself. Thomas's letter seemed to sit between them. Say the hard thing. Ask the question. Show up. So Linda said, you broke my heart. Claire looked up. I know. I do not know how to pretend that did not happen just because we learned the truth tonight. I don't want you to pretend. I love you. I love you too. And I'm angry. You should be. Linda nodded. That mattered. Claire did not ask for instant forgiveness. She did not explain. She did not blame Victoria. She simply accepted the damage. Then she said, I don't know if I can get married tomorrow. Andrew looked up. Claire. She turned toward him. I made decisions because I was afraid of disappointing your family. He looked pained. I know. You let your mother speak for me. I know. You called my mom because you thought I would regret it, but you still let it happen. Andrew looked down. And yes. Claire wiped her face. I love you. I love you. But I don't want to start our marriage tomorrow pretending none of this matters. Andrew nodded slowly. Then we don't. Linda was surprised. Claire was too. You're okay postponing. No, he said honestly, I'm devastated. Claire's eyes filled. But I would rather postpone a wedding than begin a marriage by asking you to swallow something this big because people are already in town. Claire covered her mouth. Andrew continued. My parents will be furious. Claire gave a broken laugh. That might be good for both of us. At 6 in the morning, Victoria arrived. She entered the hotel suite in a silk robe under a long coat, furious and frightened. What is happening? Claire held the letter. I'm postponing the wedding. Victoria stared. No. Claire blinked. No. You are emotional, you haven't slept, guests have flown in, the venue. Mom, Andrew said. Victoria turned. This is not your decision. It is mine, Claire said. Victoria's face hardened. Is this because Linda came here? Linda stood. Claire raised a hand. No, this is because I asked my mother not to attend my wedding, because I cared more about avoiding discomfort than about finding the truth. Victoria looked at Linda. Then at Claire. You were trying to protect yourself. Claire laughed sadly. That phrase is becoming a family curse. Victoria's mouth tightened. You are throwing away tens of thousands of dollars. Andrew said, then we lose the money. You cannot be serious. I am. Victoria stared at her son. Then at Linda. This family chaos is exactly what I was trying to prevent. Linda felt the old urge to shrink. To be polite. To avoid embarrassing Claire. Then Thomas's words returned. Show up. She looked at Victoria. My family is complicated. Victoria's expression sharpened. So is everyone's. Linda continued. The difference is that some families hide the mess under expensive flowers. Andrew almost smiled. Victoria did not. Claire stood. I need you to leave. Victoria stared at her future daughter-in-law. Excuse me. I need space. From me. And yes. The irony was not lost on anyone. Victoria left. The wedding was postponed. By noon, guests received calls and messages. Rumors spread. Some people were angry. Most were simply confused. The world did not end. That surprised Claire. She had spent months believing every decision had to preserve an image of perfection. Then the perfect wedding collapsed and people went home. For the first time in years, she slept 12 hours. Linda returned to Ohio the next day. Claire asked to come with her. Linda said no. Not cruelly. I need a little time. Claire nodded. Okay. It was difficult. That also mattered. Reconciliation began 2 weeks later. Claire drove to Ohio alone. She brought no flowers. No gifts. No dramatic apology letter. She sat at Linda's kitchen table and said, I want to understand who you were during Dad's illness. Linda looked at her. Not who you were for me, who you were. So Linda told her. Not the polished version. The real one. She told Claire how angry she had been at Thomas for dying. How guilty she felt for being angry. How she once screamed at him in the hospital parking lot because he refused another appointment. How Thomas apologized for leaving her with debt even though none of it was his fault. How Linda sometimes sat in the shower because it was the only place Claire could not hear her cry. How she was relieved when hospice started because the constant decisions stopped. Claire cried at that. So you were relieved he was dying. Linda flinched. Then Claire corrected herself. No, that came out wrong. Linda took a breath. I was relieved we were no longer pretending we could negotiate with death. Claire nodded slowly. That makes sense. They talked for 6 hours. The next morning, Claire asked to see the financial records from that year. Linda almost became defensive. Then she remembered the cost of secrecy. She brought out a box. Medical bills. Insurance statements. Mortgage papers. College savings. Claire studied everything. She saw the Houston estimate. $38,000 for travel, consultation, testing, and treatment that insurance likely would not cover. She saw Thomas's handwritten note across the top. No, enough. Claire touched the page. Her eyes filled. I wish I had known. So do I. But I also understand why you didn't tell 15-year-old me. Linda looked at her. I should have told 30-year-old you. And yes. Linda nodded. And yes. That became the language of their repair. Not excuses. Not instant absolution. Yes. That happened. Yes. It hurt. Yes. I should have done better. Susan's reconciliation took longer. Claire did not speak to her for 3 months. When they finally met, Susan apologized without defending herself. I wanted your mother to be guilty because if nobody was guilty, then Thomas just died and there was nothing any of us could have done. Claire listened. That does not excuse what you told me. No. You let me punish her for your guilt. And yes. Claire cried. So did I. Susan reached for her hand. Claire moved hers away. Not yet. Susan nodded. Okay. 6 months after the postponed wedding, Claire and Andrew began couples counseling. Andrew surprised everyone, including himself. He admitted that his family's approval had shaped more of his life than he wanted to acknowledge. He had mistaken calm for health. In the Bennett family, conflict was handled privately, quickly, and preferably without anyone saying what they actually felt. Victoria was not evil. That was almost harder. She genuinely believed reputation, stability, and appearances protected people. She had taught Andrew that a successful family did not embarrass itself publicly. Claire had fit beautifully into that system until her grief became inconvenient. Andrew had tried to help her manage it instead of asking whether the system itself was wrong. He apologized to Linda in person. I should have called you sooner. And yes, I should have told my mother to stay out of it. And yes, I should have told Claire I would rather have an uncomfortable wedding than one without you. Linda looked at him. And yes, Andrew almost smiled. You are not making this easy. No. Fair. Linda laughed. That was the beginning. The wedding eventually took place the following spring. Smaller. 80 guests. A garden behind a historic inn. No string quartet. No museum board acquaintances Claire barely knew. No 3-day event. Victoria attended. So did Susan. They were seated far apart. Linda wore the blue dress she had never returned. When Claire saw her before the ceremony, she cried. You kept it. I paid too much not to. Claire laughed. Then became serious. I want to ask you something. What? Will you walk me down the aisle? Linda's eyes filled. You don't have to replace your father. I'm not. Claire took her hand. I'm asking my mother to walk beside me. Linda cried. And yes. They stood at the entrance to the garden. Claire carried Thomas's letter, folded inside a small fabric pocket, sewn into the lining of her bouquet wrap. Before the music started, she whispered, I used to think Dad missing this would be the saddest part. Linda looked at her. What is the saddest part? That I almost made you miss it too. Linda squeezed her hand. You didn't. I almost did. And yes. Claire nodded. Then smiled through tears. And yes. They walked. Halfway down the aisle, Linda heard someone sniff loudly. She looked. Susan was crying. Victoria was too. Andrew stood at the end of the aisle with tears on his face. For one strange second, Linda felt Thomas everywhere. Not as a ghost. as influence, as memory, as the consequences of words spoken 16 years earlier, finally reaching the people who needed them. The ceremony was simple. When the officiant asked who supported Claire in this marriage, Linda said, "I do." Then, after a pause, Susan said from her seat, "I do too." Several people laughed softly. Claire cried. At the reception, Claire gave a short speech. "I spent a lot of my life believing love meant people would protect me from pain." Linda looked at her. Claire continued, "I learned this year that sometimes love means telling the truth early enough that people can make their own choices about what to do with it." Andrew squeezed her hand. "I also learned that forgiveness is not the same as pretending nothing happened." Susan lowered her eyes. "And that a family can survive being imperfect if everyone stops fighting to control the story." Claire looked at Linda. "My mother spent years protecting me from things she thought would break me. Then I broke her heart because I did not know the whole truth." The room became still. Linda shook her head slightly. Claire smiled. "It's okay, Mom. We said we were done hiding the hard part." Linda laughed through tears. Claire raised her glass. "To my mother, Linda, not because she was perfect, because she showed up even after I gave her every reason not to." People raised glasses. Linda cried. Later that night, she stepped outside. The garden lights glowed behind her. She sat on a bench. Susan joined her after a few minutes. "Can I sit?" Linda nodded. They watched guests dance through the windows. Susan said, "Thomas would have been unbearable tonight." Linda smiled. "He would have tried to give a 20-minute toast. He would have cried before Claire reached the aisle. He cried at commercials." Susan laughed. Then they were quiet. "I am sorry," Susan said again. Linda looked at her. "I know. I don't expect things to go back." "They won't." Susan nodded. "Could they go somewhere else?" Linda thought about it. Maybe." That was enough. Over the next few years, the sisters rebuilt slowly. Coffee. Birthday calls. A shared Thanksgiving. Arguments that did not become disappearances. They never became the girls whispering after lights out again. They became two older women who understood that love could survive without pretending history had been different. Claire and Linda changed too. Their closeness became less automatic and more honest. Claire stopped expecting Linda to say she was fine. Linda stopped using fine as an answer. When Linda retired at 65, she admitted she was terrified. Claire did not tell her what to do. She asked, "What do you want?" Thomas would have been proud. Linda took a part-time bookkeeping job for a nonprofit. She traveled. She painted the porch railing. She finally repaired the kitchen cabinet. One Sunday afternoon, Claire called. "Are you busy?" "Yes." Claire laughed. "With what?" "None of your business." "That's rude." "I'm learning boundaries. Therapy has made you impossible." "You started it." They laughed. Then Claire said, "I'm pregnant." Linda stopped breathing. "What?" "We're having a baby." Linda cried so hard she had to sit down. Months later, when Claire gave birth to a daughter, she named her Nora Thomas Bennett. Linda stared at the hospital bracelet. "Thomas?" Claire nodded. "For Dad." Linda cried again. "You are going to dehydrate at this rate," Andrew said. Nobody listened to him. When Nora was 3, Claire brought her to Ohio for a weekend. The little girl found an old photograph of Thomas in the hallway. "Who's that?" Claire crouched beside her. "That's Grandpa Thomas." "Where is he?" Claire looked at Linda. Years earlier, Linda might have stepped in. Might have softened. might have decided what a child could handle. Instead, she waited. Claire said, "He died before you were born." Nora frowned. "Why?" "He got very sick." "Did Grandma make him better?" Claire's eyes filled. "No, Grandma loved him, but some sickness can't be fixed." Nora accepted this with the practical seriousness of a 3-year-old. "Okay." Then she ran toward the kitchen. Claire stood. Linda looked at her. "You did good." Claire smiled. "I had a good teacher." Linda raised an eyebrow. "Eventually." They both laughed. That night, after everyone went to sleep, Linda sat alone in the living room. Thomas's letter had been returned to her only once after the wedding, so she could have it professionally copied. The original belonged to Claire now. Linda kept the copy in the cedar chest. She no longer opened it often. She did not need to. She knew the sentence that mattered most. Show up. For years, Linda had believed showing up meant carrying everything. It did not. Showing up could mean telling the truth. It could mean letting someone be angry. It could mean admitting you were wrong without turning the apology into a request for comfort. It could mean refusing to disappear when shame told you that leaving would be easier. Claire had shown up. Susan had eventually shown up. Andrew had shown up. Even Victoria, in her own difficult way, learned. When Nora turned 5, Victoria and Linda ended up sitting together at the child's birthday party. Victoria watched Nora destroy a cupcake with blue frosting. "She has Claire's stubbornness," Victoria said. Linda smiled. "And Andrew's confidence. God help us." They laughed. Then Victoria became serious. "I owe you an apology." Linda looked at her. Victoria continued. "I thought I was helping Claire create distance from instability." "You thought I was instability." "And yes." The honesty surprised Linda. "I was wrong." Linda waited. Victoria looked toward the children. "I grew up in a family where public embarrassment had consequences. My father lost a business after a scandal. My mother spent the rest of her life terrified of gossip. I learned to control appearances because I thought appearances controlled safety." Linda nodded. "That explains it." "It does not excuse it." "No." Victoria smiled faintly. "You and Claire have trained everyone around you to stop confusing those things." Linda laughed. "Apparently it is our family hobby." Victoria looked at her. "I am sorry I helped convince your daughter that excluding you was reasonable." Linda felt the old wound. Smaller now. Still real. "Thank you." They watched Nora open gifts. After a while, Victoria said, "I still think the original wedding flowers were better." Linda turned. "You are impossible." "I've been told." Years passed. Linda grew older. So did everyone else. The story of the canceled wedding eventually became family history. Not a secret. A story. At anniversaries, Andrew joked that he and Claire had technically had 2 wedding dates. Claire would correct him. 1 wedding, 2 invoices. Linda would add, and 1 mother who was uninvited from the first one. Everyone would groan. Claire would say, "Mom." Linda would smile. "What? We said we don't hide the hard part." The joke worked because the truth beneath it was no longer denied. When Linda turned 70, Claire organized a dinner in the backyard of the Ohio house. Nothing extravagant. String lights. Long tables. Food from Linda's favorite Italian restaurant. Susan came early to help. Victoria brought wine. Andrew burned garlic bread and blamed the oven. Nora, now 8, made a banner that said "Happy Birthday, Grandma," Linda, in letters large enough to cover half the fence. After dinner, Claire stood. I promised Mom no speeches. Linda pointed at her. You did. So this is not a speech. It looks like one. It is a statement. Everyone laughed. Claire held up a glass. When I was 31, I thought adulthood meant I had finally become independent from my parents. Linda listened. I learned that year that becoming an adult actually meant learning to see my mother as an adult too. Her voice softened. Not as the keeper of my childhood, not as the person who should always know what to say, not as someone whose mistakes proved she did not love me enough. Linda's eyes filled. As Linda, Claire raised the glass. To the woman who taught me that family gets stronger when the truth is allowed to stay in the room. Everyone raised glasses. Linda looked around. At Susan. At Victoria. At Andrew. At Nora. At Claire. The people around the table were not there because nothing bad had happened. They were there because something bad had happened, and, eventually, everyone chose to stop protecting themselves from the truth of it. Later, Linda went inside alone. She climbed the stairs more slowly now. She opened the cedar chest. Inside were old photographs, Thomas's watch, hospital papers she no longer feared, the blue dress from Claire's wedding, and the copy of the letter. She read the final lines. Don't do that. Say the hard thing. Ask the question. Show up. Linda smiled. You were right, she whispered. Then she laughed. Do not get used to hearing that. Downstairs, Claire called Mom. Linda closed the chest. Coming. Are you hiding from cleanup? And yes. We can hear you. Linda walked toward the stairs. For years, she had carried the belief that protecting someone meant standing between them and pain. Thomas's death taught her that some pain could not be prevented. Claire's wedding taught her something else. Pain hidden too long did not disappear. It changed shape. It became suspicion. Resentment. Distance. Stories people invented because the truth had been withheld. Love did not require controlling the story. Love required trusting people enough to let them live inside the truth. Linda had once lost an invitation to her daughter's wedding because neither of them understood that. But the canceled wedding was not the end of their family. It was the moment their family finally stopped pretending that love alone was enough. Love needed honesty. Honesty needed courage. Forgiveness needed accountability. And reconciliation needed time. The next morning, Claire found Linda on the porch drinking coffee. She sat beside her. Good birthday. Very. You cried. I am 70. I have earned the right to cry whenever I want. Claire smiled. Fair. They watched Nora chase a squirrel across the yard. After a moment, Claire said, Do you ever wish you had given me Dad's letter earlier? Linda did not hesitate. And yes. How much earlier? Probably when you were 25. Why 25? You were unbearable at 22. Claire laughed. True. Linda became serious. I wish I had trusted you sooner. Claire nodded. I wish I had trusted you longer. Linda looked at her. Claire continued. When Susan told me her version, part of me wanted to believe it because I was still angry Dad died. Linda's eyes filled. I thought if someone made the wrong choice, then maybe his death made sense. That is what Susan thought too. I know. Claire leaned her head against Linda's shoulder. I'm sorry I made you pay for that. Linda kissed her hair. I forgave you. I know. That does not mean I forgot. I know that too. They sat quietly. That was another thing they had learned. Forgiveness did not erase memory. It changed what memory was allowed to control. Nora shouted from the yard. Grandma. Linda stood. What? Come see. Claire looked at her. You going? Linda smiled. Apparently I've been summoned. She walked toward her granddaughter. Halfway across the yard, she looked back. Claire sat on the porch watching her. For a moment, Linda saw the little girl who once waited for her father to come home from treatment. Then she saw the woman. It's her daughter. Not someone to protect from every truth. Someone strong enough to share one. Linda turned back toward Nora. The morning was bright. The maple leaves moved in the wind. And for once, there was nothing in the family that needed to stay hidden. A few weeks after Linda's 70th birthday, Claire arrived at the Ohio house carrying a small wooden box. What is that? Linda asked. A project. Linda immediately became suspicious. Projects usually mean you want me to throw something away. Not this time. They sat at the dining room table. Claire opened the box. Inside were several carefully labeled envelopes, a flash drive, copies of old photographs, Thomas's voice recording, and a printed copy of the letter. Linda stared. What are you doing? I'm making a family archive. Linda raised an eyebrow. You are becoming your mother. Terrifying, isn't it? Claire smiled, then became serious. I don't want Nora to grow up with only pieces of people. Linda touched the edge of the box. Claire continued. I spent years thinking Dad was a perfect memory because nobody told me the difficult parts. Then I almost turned you into a villain because I found one piece of the story that did not fit. Linda looked down. I want her to know people whole. Even the ugly parts. Especially the complicated parts. Linda smiled faintly. That is more mature than I was at your age. Claire laughed. You were raising a teenager and surviving grief. I was arguing with a wedding planner about linen colors. That was a very serious linen crisis. It was champagne, not ivory. Tragic. They laughed. Then Claire placed the voice recorder on the table. I asked Aunt Susan if she was okay with this being saved. And she said yes. Linda looked surprised. Claire said she recorded something too. Linda's smile disappeared. What? Claire pressed play. Susan's voice filled the room. My name is Susan Miller. Thomas Walker was my brother-in-law and one of my closest friends for most of my adult life. When he became sick, I was terrified. I turned that fear into certainty. I believed there had to be another treatment, another hospital, another doctor. When Thomas chose hospice, I decided someone had failed him because accepting that nobody could save him was harder. I blamed Linda. Thomas told me directly that stopping treatment was his decision. I hid that truth for years because admitting it meant admitting how badly I had hurt my sister. Later, I repeated an incomplete version of the story to Claire. That contributed to Claire excluding her mother from her wedding. I am recording this because families sometimes inherit stories the same way they inherit photographs. If nobody corrects a false story, it becomes a kind of heirloom. I do not want mine passed down. Linda did not give up on Thomas. I was wrong. The recording ended. Linda stared at the device. Her eyes filled slowly. She did that. Claire nodded. Last week. Linda wiped her face. Why didn't she tell me? She said the apology wasn't supposed to make you comfort her. Linda laughed through tears. She is learning. So are all of us. Linda picked up the recorder. For 16 years, Susan's shame had preserved a lie. Now her accountability preserved the correction. That mattered more than Linda expected. Put it in the box, she said. Claire did. Then she handed Linda a blank card. Your turn. My turn for what? Write something for Nora, or for whoever opens this box someday. Linda stared at the card. I hate assignments. You made me write thank you cards for every birthday gift until I was 18. That was character building. This is revenge. Linda laughed. She took a pen. For a long time, she did not write. Then she began. To whoever is reading this, if you are looking through this box because you want to know what happened in our family, you may be tempted to decide who was good and who was bad. Try not to. We were people who loved one another and sometimes used love as an excuse to control, hide, accuse, or avoid. Thomas was brave and frightened. Susan was loving and wrong. Claire was hurt and hurtful. I was protective and dishonest by omission. Andrew wanted peace and waited too long to speak. Victoria wanted stability and confused it with appearances. None of us were only our worst decision. But none of us healed until we stopped pretending those decisions did not matter. If this family gives you anything, I hope it is not the idea that forgiveness fixes everything. Forgiveness is only one part. Tell the truth. Take responsibility. Change your behavior. Give people time. And when you love someone, do not protect them so completely that they have to invent the truth themselves. Linda stopped writing. Claire was crying. You could have warned me. You gave me the assignment. Claire laughed and wiped her face. Linda signed the card. Then she placed it in the box. Years later, after Linda was gone, Claire opened that box with Nora. Nora was 23 then, old enough to understand that adults could love each other and still be scared. They listened to Thomas's voice. They listened to Susan's confession. They read the letter. Then Nora read Linda's card. When she finished, she sat quietly. Claire waited. Finally, Nora said, Grandma really wrote loving and wrong about Aunt Susan. Claire laughed. That was your grandmother being diplomatic. Nora smiled. Then she looked at the old wedding photograph in the box. Linda and Claire stood together at the entrance to the garden, both crying, both smiling. Was Grandma really not invited the first time? Nora asked. Claire's smile faded slightly. No. Did she forgive you? Yes. Right away. No. Nora nodded. Good. Claire laughed in surprise. Good. Yeah, otherwise this whole box would be lying. Claire looked at her daughter. Then at the letter her father had written before she was old enough to understand it. Thomas had asked Linda to give Claire the truth someday. Linda waited too long. Susan hid part of it. Claire punished the wrong person. A wedding was canceled. People were hurt. Money was lost. Trust cracked. And still, the family did not end there. Because eventually, someone told the truth. Then someone else did. Then another. That was how the repair happened. Not all at once. Not perfectly. One honest piece at a time. Claire closed the wooden box. Outside, evening light moved across the yard of the old Ohio house, which now belonged to another family. The maple tree was still there. Its branches reached far beyond the cracked stone path Thomas had laid decades earlier. Claire looked at Nora. Ready to go. Nora nodded. They walked toward the car. Before getting in, Claire looked back once. The house had held illness, silence, resentment, apologies, birthdays, laughter, and more love than any building could reasonably be expected to contain. For years, Claire thought the lesson of her family was that secrets destroy trust. That was only half of it. The other half was that truth, when finally spoken, asks something difficult from everyone who hears it. It asks the accused to resist revenge. It asks the guilty to stop defending themselves. It asks the hurt to decide what forgiveness can and cannot restore. It asks families to become something new instead of trying to return to what existed before the damage. Claire had once believed reconciliation meant getting her mother back. She eventually understood that Linda had never belonged to her in the first place. Linda was her mother. Linda was also Linda. That was the truth Thomas had tried to leave them 16 years before the wedding. It had taken them far too long to understand it. But they did. And because they did, the truth did not end with them.